there cherry pies, this is another Q&A video. I'm going to be taking from the Instagram questions that I got for my last Q&A video because it takes me so long to get through them that there's really no point putting out a new announcement every time I'm going to do a Q&A, so I just keep going back and kind of picking from the questions I had before until I'm pretty much done with them. So I'm going to get right into it. The first question here is, what is your take on Disney movies and their hidden meanings, like imagery, symbolism, etc., especially given the fact that Walt Disney was linked to a secret society? I have seen a lot of the hidden imagery, although a lot of the things that I've seen, because I've not actually specifically researched it and I've not taken a massive interest in it myself, a lot of the stuff that I've seen has been the sexual stuff and the different kind of phallic symbols that are built into the castles and shit like that. I do remember seeing on one of the Chaos Magic Facebook groups at one point somebody posting one of the very early Disney animations, and it was to do with teaching. I really wish I could remember. I can't actually find it online now, but it was basically teaching a mathematical principle, but it went into occultic territory, and it was very interesting, and it was very occultic in its nature and in what it was actually conveying to kids. So that was really interesting. I know that if you go online, you can look up various different stills from the different films, and people will explain how the imagery that's built into the houses and the sets that have been animated are Masonic and, you know, that kind of thing. But I don't think it's to do with wanting to subliminally feed Masonic imagery into children's minds or anything like that, and I don't think it was anything anywhere near that insidious. I just think if Walt Disney was a Mason, then he's going to want to kind of punctuate his art and his work with those various different things. I don't think it has to be that serious. I don't take anything deeper from it than that. Bear in mind, obviously, I haven't looked into this. I don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes, as it were. I am much more interested in thinking about the messages that Disney feeds to children regarding things like gender roles and stuff like that, the messaging that comes through very strongly for little girls, and how we can actually create a much healthier culture in mainstream animation going forward. I feel like I've just taken a really interesting, really juicy, really meaty topic and just taken it back to something completely banal. I'm really sorry about that. But I don't know that much about Disney's Masonic activities, but I'm sure Walt Disney definitely put loads of different shit, Masonic, phallic and otherwise, into the early movies. I know I love them. I know I love Snow White. I know I love Sleeping Beauty. I love those early Disney films. They're amazing. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say early because I wasn't really into like the very early Mickey Mouse stuff and whatnot, but that era, that gets me every time. I hope this isn't too personal, but can you describe one of your favourite rituals that you created for yourself? Yeah, there certainly are a lot of rituals I've created that I would consider to be too personal to talk about, so I just wouldn't talk about them necessarily, and they're to do with, you know, specific things in my life, specific things I was healing from. But there are loads of rituals that I can talk about openly that I feel really helped me, and one that really comes to mind right now that I want to mention is I do work with a poppet. I do have you know, a poppet doll. I think some of you guys have seen it on one of the earlier altar tours that I did. It's pink. It does contain my hair, my fingernails, you know, my blood, etc. And I use that mostly to perform emotional and physical healing magic on myself. And there was a particular ritual that I did that was all about my back injury, my back pain, the journey that I've been through with that. And that really was something else. And that was the first time that I really incorporated my poppet into something that I felt was very meaningful and that I thought about long and hard. And it was a very long ritual where I basically just used the poppet to go through the complete journey of my injury, from the time that it happened right through to like all the various different points of pain, you know, having the MRI scan, finding out what was wrong with me, being suggested for surgery, and then deciding basically to turn my back on the mainstream biomedical stuff and just go in my own direction. I really just told the entire story using the poppet. So I used pieces of string, I used crystals, I used pins, and I was basically talking out loud the whole time I was doing this in sacred space, and I was telling the poppet the journey that I'd been on. And as I was talking about the journey, I was allowing myself to be angry when I wanted to be angry, sorrowful when I wanted to be sorrowful. I was releasing, I was crying, I was just remembering, and I was also kind of intermittently just sending love to the poppet, holding my hands out over the poppet, and just really urging myself and my spirit and my body to heal and to come back together, you know, as a holistic oneness and really to be able to move forward from that point. And I really felt like the poppet was me in that moment, and of course that's what sympathetic magic has got to be all about, right? So it was a very, very heady, very long ritual slash spell, and it was incredible, and I really think it made a massive difference to me. It allowed me to really externalize my story and think about what I'd been through in a very magical and metaphysical way, which is one of the key ways that stuff tends to go in for me. Some of the most elaborate rituals that I ever came up with actually kind of came into being once I started working with my matron deity Hell, and that gave me such an amazing excuse, for want of a better word, to go off the deep end with ritual and really script it out and really be very meticulous about it, but also incredibly creative about it. And some of the earlier kind of interactions that I had in sacred space with Hell, where I wrote an address to her, I did an offering to her, and I did some kind of a, you know, a ritual act to symbolize that I wanted to commune with her and learn from her. Those rituals were incredible. But I also think a lot of the rituals that have had the most profound effect on me too are the daily practice rituals that I've decided upon. And obviously there have been so many different kind of incarnations of daily practice for me. I've gone from one thing to another, but whenever I decide upon something that I'm going to do for a week or for 30 days, and it's just going to be that same thing that I'm going to do every morning, even though it's really hard, or every evening, whatever, even though it's really hard to stick to sometimes, and I will admit that it really is hard to stick to because I'm a natural rule breaker, those decisions about daily rituals that I'm going to be doing for a set period of time really help me to connect with something. I think that there is like an accumulation that occurs when you do the same thing over and over again that brings you to a really nice result at the end. What advice do you have for a new witch that feels like they've lost their momentum or interest? I love magic and my spirituality, but I feel demotivated in my practice and study. Yeah, I completely feel you on that. There's so much that I could say. I could make videos upon videos about this kind of thing. But a few things that I want to mention is, one, simplify. If your practice is overly complicated, you're probably finding it overwhelming. If you're trying to pack too many different elements, too many different practices or areas of study in, again, you're probably starting to find the whole process overwhelming. So simplify, strip everything back to just one or possibly two key things that you do on a regular or semi-regular basis, and build from there, and build slowly. Do not be tempted to pile on loads and loads of stuff. Another thing I will say is open up to signs, messages, clues, downloads that will help you to understand which direction to go in with regard to practices and areas of study. I think it can be far too easy for witches to start in a very cognitive direction where they're thinking about what they want in their practice, what would suit them, you know, what kinds of things would glean the maximum results, what kinds of areas to study in conjunction with what other areas, and it's all very cognitive and it's all very much coming from an ego state, and there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. It's good to know what kinds of practices and what kinds of subjects you want to favour, but I think there can be a lot of just kind of intuitive hits and spiritual downloads and messages and signs that can be lost when we start to try to weave our practice in a very cognitive way. So let go of all that stuff about what you think you should be doing, you know, what your interests are and how you want to build a practice that speaks to that. Instead, just let yourself walk around in the world as a clear vessel for messages to come through from the higher mind, you know, from elsewhere, from beyond the cognitive, whatever that looks like in your framework. I think sometimes there are messages right in front of us to show us what we need to be doing on our witchy journey, and we are actually really ploughing through with different topics and activities and stuff in a cognitive manner, and we're missing the fact that spirit is telling us what direction we need to go in. So we need to kind of surrender to those messages that are from beyond the egoic mindset. Always remember that we are not always supposed to be practicing in the exact same way with the exact same amount of time spent in practice. Things do happen. We do need to be flexible. We do need to be yielding to the life changes that we go through as human beings, and it's totally okay to do that. So if you are going through a lot right now, if you are experiencing a lot of tumultuous, topsy-turvy changes, darling, in your life, then maybe it's not the right time for you to be practicing as diligently as perhaps you were before. So you do have to give yourself some leeway, and that is very important as well to remember. What is your favourite tarot deck? If if there was only one tarot deck in the world and I had to decide which one it was, and I had to get rid of all the others, I had to put them on a big pyre and burn them. This is a fucking horrible visualization and I want it out of my head immediately. But if that was the case, I would definitely save the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck. There's so much wrong with that answer, and I'm aware that there's so much wrong with it, but that's what I'm going with, because the reason being, it was the first deck that I really truly learned with. I did have Tarot de Marseille and the Mythic Tarot beforehand, but the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, that was when I really came back to tarot. That was when I realised that I needed it, that I couldn't just leave it behind. And I went and I purchased that deck with the intention of really allowing myself to fall back into that world that had previously done so much for me. So I have a very strong emotional connection to Rider-Waite-Smith, and it was the deck I used to get really, really deep with the tool and learn it in a way that I could never have had the emotional capacity or the intellectual chops to learn it in the past, obviously, because I was just a kid when I first got hold of a deck. So even though I had all of these amazing feelings about tarot and what it could be for me and what it could mean for me, when I went and bought Rider-Waite-Smith in my 20s, that was me saying, take me home. I'm going back to where I belong. This tool has been calling to me over and over again, and I'm no longer prepared to just ignore that calling. So for me, Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot gave me so much, and you know, it is the linchpin in a lot of ways for a lot of the modern imagery that we have in so many decks. So it is the template on which so much else has been built, and that's another reason why I would save that and why I would definitely still refer to it as my favourite deck. How do you come up with your tarot readings and card meanings in the readings? Spread design, tarot spread design, I feel like that's probably something I do have a bit of a natural aptitude for, and I do like to do it a lot. For me, it's really about considering a problem that either I have or that my clientele have been having, and thinking about how to divide that problem down into different focus areas and having a card for each focus area. So I decide how many cards I want in the reading. For me, an average full-length tarot reading is 6 cards, but I can go up to 7 or sometimes even 10. And I think about the issue that I'm designing the spread to speak to, and then I think about the various different aspects of that issue that we would need to look at. And normally it's things like, you know, the underlying reasons for the issue, the key blocks at the moment, you know, short-term actions that you can take to start to move through the blocks, strengths and abilities that you have at your disposal that you can use to get you through the issue, some kind of archetype or symbol or talisman that will give you the power to get through the issue long term, that kind of thing. So I'm thinking about different kind of questions that speak to the issue, and each one of those questions or focus areas that would help with the issue have their own card. Coming up with the different interpretations for each card is really just a matter of practice. It's a matter of reading as many different interpretations as you can possibly get your hands on about every card, and then you add your own experiential stuff to every card as well. So what the cards make you think of and what you've gone through in your life that speaks to the key energies of the card. It's really about spending time with the deck, spending time with each card individually, really getting to know and really dedicating yourself to it, dedicating your focus and energy to it. I like to let the spread speak to itself. So I look at the spread overall, and I definitely connect different cards together. And if you've ever had a reading with me, you will notice that, especially video readings or Skype readings, where I actually say this card relates to the earlier message from this card, and this is how the two tie together. And I do like to notice the overall energy of a spread, the overall message of a spread. I have a look at what elements are ruling, and if there are any kind of numerical patterns or other kinds of patterns that I can witness. And it's really about letting the spread speak to me as a holistic thing rather than immediately breaking it down into separate cards, and that really helps you to get deeper into the meanings and give more reliable and useful interpretations as well. Do you use tarot as a planning tool? That's a really good question. It's complicated to explain the answer to that. Basically, when I plan what I'm going to be doing with my time and my energy, I plan it in a very conscious way. I don't let the cards decide for me what I'm going to be doing and what I'm going to be spending my time on. that's not effective for me, and it's not productive for me. I need to make the decision about what I'm going to be spending my time and focus on. However, after I've made the decision and I know what kind of direction I'm headed in with various areas of life, I can then use tarot to lean into what the plan is going to be. So it's not like I'm letting tarot tell me what the plan is, but I'm letting tarot enhance my plans and really help me to focus and zoom in on various areas over the coming weeks or months. And I actually do this for my clients as well. I do sell a 6-month planner reading, which is resoundingly popular. It's always been one of my most popular readings that I do. I'll link that down below in case you want to check it out, guys. The 6-month planner reading does a similar kind of thing. It doesn't aim to tell you what you need to spend your time and focus on, because, you know, far be it from me to tell you what to be doing with your time. But what it does is it helps you to lean into your plans even more by bringing up various different areas of consideration, inspiring messages, empowering, encouraging guidance, so that you can move ahead with the plans that you've decided on, but with kind of an enhancement. So I use tarot as a tool to enhance the planning I've already done and the decisions I've already made, if that makes any sense. And I also, in my personal path, really like to use the archetypes from tarot to give me that encouragement and motivation to move forward. So let's say, for example, that I have some really big financial goals and I've decided to focus on finances for a particular month. I might take out 9 of Pentacles, for example, and place that onto my altar and make sure that I do some contemplation or meditation every morning pertaining to that card and the energies of that card. And I can see it throughout the day as I walk past my altar space, and it really just gives me that lift, and it kind of helps me to reconnect with my intentions throughout the day. So I do like to do that as well. And I suppose in a way, again, that's me planning from a conscious place, but allowing tarot to enhance the plans that I have made. Hi Kellyanne, I've been learning the tarot for a few months now, so I'm still a newbie, and your videos have been helping me a lot. Awesome, that's great. My question is, why sometimes in a spread the cards seem to fit and explain so smoothly my question, and other times the cards seem so complicated to read, like they do not make any sense at all with the question? How can I become more comfortable reading those complicated spreads? Okay, I love this question, and this is something that a lot of people talk about having issues with, for sure. First of all, this really reminds me of that Oscar Wilde quote that I used to have painted on my wall as a teenager: "The truth is rarely pure and never simple." I often think that when I turn over my cards and I'm like, well, this is a trash fire. What the fuck am I supposed to do with this? People read the cards in different ways. Some of what I'm going to advise now is going to be good for some people and not really that great for other people. But I'm going to throw out a few different suggestions, bearing in mind that people do have different attitudes towards the cards and the way that they kind of play with them. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to get out the way is sometimes when you're reading for yourself, certain cards hold a lot more weight than other cards. And if you do feel like the spread overall is very confusing, what you might want to do is take a photograph of it or note down the spread positions that have come up. And then instead of reading the entire spread, you might just want to feel where you are being called to go, in terms of which cards are actually asking for your attention and your energy in the moment. So it might not always be a good time for you to read the entire spread if you feel like it is just very convoluted, it is very, you know, murky, and you're not really sure overall how it ties together, or there are certain cards that you just cannot interpret for yourself. It can be a good idea in that instance to just let spirit pull you towards the specific cards you're supposed to be focusing on, and then, as I said, make a record of the other cards that have come through. You may want to revisit them at a later time, or they may become clearer at a later time. Next piece of advice for you is, if you are a newbie, it is highly likely that you only have a very small handful of interpretations for each card, or you may even just still be using online interpretations or interpretations you're getting from a book that you're using. So in that instance, if certain cards are confusing you, you may need to stop what you're doing and actually get online or go through some other resources to actually look for other interpretations of the card. There are so many different nuances, so many different suckers on so many different tentacles of the overall octopus of what a card is all about, darling, that maybe you are just missing out on some key messages that could be pertinent for you. So sometimes it's about going on that little study adventure to find other interpretations that you might might be missing that might fill in the gaps for you. Definitely do not rush. Don't be really impatient with yourself and frustrated because you're finding that some of the readings you're doing for yourself are confusing. That's actually really common when you're a newbie at anything. You know, you're going to be confused. Things are going to be convoluted, and that's okay. And lastly, I want to make the point that in your question, you said to me that sometimes the cards don't make any sense at all with the question. And in terms of that particular part of your message to me, I would definitely ask you to consider if you are narrowing down the possibilities for each card or being rigid about what each card can mean. A typical trap that I find newbie readers getting stuck in, and this is something that comes up time and time again with my tarot mentoring clients, and we really have to chip away at it, is deciding what the meanings are for the four suits in tarot. So many people have this block when it comes to the fact that pentacles can be about more than just money and material stuff. Cups can be about more than love and relationships. Each of the four suits is incredibly more nuanced and in-depth than just those, you know, very, very basic interpretations. So for instance, if somebody is wanting to do a reading about love and they keep getting spreads that are mainly pentacles, they may tell themselves that these cards, these pentacle cards, have got nothing to do with love and relationships and stuff. Why do they keep coming up? But actually, pentacles do speak to everything. Cups speak to money just as much as pentacles speak to love and relationships, believe me. So if you're making that mistake, it's fine. It's a mistake that a lot of newbies do make. But pentacles, cups, wands and swords, they're so much more in depth than just the very, very basic meanings that we give them right at the beginning of the journey. So make sure that you're not restricting yourself when it comes to what you are telling yourself that the four suits can actually mean. If you're doing a love reading and pentacles keep coming up or swords keep coming up, it's not a mistake. It's not a mistake. All of those cards speak to your issue perfectly. So it's about going on a journey to deepen your relationship with the four elements. And if I could just do a little bit of a plug here, you might want to check out my Trainee Tarot course if you haven't already. You did mention my videos have been helping, so maybe you have seen it. But if there's anyone out there who's a tarot newbie and you're looking for some video resources, you might find my 10-part training program useful. It's completely free. It's right here on YouTube. I will leave the playlist link down below for you. Tell us your favorite comfort food recipe. Okay, this is a really good question. So basically, one thing I want to say is that if I'm feeling really low or I'm experiencing a bout of depression or whatever, it's not always likely that I do want to cook for myself. There are a number of things that I like to eat that I find comforting to just eat in bed while I watch videos. If I don't have the appetite to cook myself a meal, I'm not going to force myself to eat a full meal. I'm not going to force myself to cook or eat hot food. Two of the things that I love, love, love more than anything else are olives that are stuffed with garlic and jalapenos. Oh, delicious. And also popcorn. I just like to make popcorn on the stove, and I will like just put a little bit of vegan spread in and oil at the beginning, and then I just eat that in a big bowl in bed in my jammies, you know. I love that. But in terms of stuff that I like to make that's really comforting and really, hearty, I really like to have quinoa on toast, and I like to have it with a sauce that has got loads of garlic, loads of red onion and loads of tomatoes in it. I might make it from scratch. I might just pick up a Lloyd Grossman thing in the shop and add stuff to it if I feel like the flavour isn't right. But I basically just pop the quinoa in, wait for it to pop and get all puffy and lovely, and then I stir in the sauce that I've made. It's going to be really flavoursome, like really. I might put soy sauce in there, I might put fucking balsamic vinegar in there. It could go anywhere, okay? I could put all-purpose seasoning in there, not sure. I just keep tasting it to see how it tastes, and then I pop it on toast. So it's basically like having beans on toast, but healthier and a lot more flavoursome. And then if I'm really feeling low and I need a little bit of comfort, a little bit of mother's milk, then I'll definitely put some vegan cheese on the top to make it creamy and delicious and yummy, or a little dollop of like vegan cream cheese, you know, so like vegan Philadelphia, for example. I really, really love that. Something else that I really love to do is salad wraps when I'm just feeling like I need a little pick-me-up. The salad could have all kinds of different things in it. I really love to have crunchy salad, so I like a lot of celery in there sometimes. Sometimes I really like to have like mushroom and red pepper salads. I like to have lots of rocket. If I'm feeling like shit, rocket salad is the one. I really love it. Even as I'm washing rocket and cutting it up and whatnot, I'll I'll be eating it. I'll just be eating mouthfuls of it. I love it so much. I might have some raw broccoli in there, or some slightly pan-fried broccoli that's been just tossed in garlic for a little bit. And then I just get some egg-free garlic mayo, oh my goddess, and I just slap it all over a heated wrap. It's got to be white, a white bread wrap, not like a really grainy, healthy thing. If it's comfort food, it's got to be white, fluffy, like tortilla bread. And then I just wrap it all up and I just munch down on it, and I want one right now. Oh my goddess, just from answering that question, I want one of those babies. P.S. If this wrap was made and sponsored by PMT, then I'm probably also going to finish it off with a little moo milk thing. It's like vegan chocolate that they do. I don't know if you have it on the other side of the pond or anywhere else, but it's like a little chocolate bar, and it's got, basically it tastes like a crunchy. It tastes like a crunchy, but no cows were harmed during the making of it, and it's just gorgeous. How do you decide to let people know that you're pagan or a witch? Christians seem to be most bold in wanting to push to find out what you do or don't believe. Do you always tell? I find that I'm mostly guarded and say that I'm spiritual. I'd like to be more loud and proud, but my intuition seems to mostly prompt me to keep my beliefs under my hat. I don't know whereabouts in the world you are, and the answer to this question for people in various parts of the world obviously differs really widely. I find that when I say I'm a witch, the responses are never normally super scandalous. You know, there might be people that don't know what to say. They've never come across a witch before, but they're open to learning about it if it ever comes up. So it's not like I get a lot of judgment, an obscene amount of judgment. Certainly I don't go out of my way to talk about my beliefs with Christians. I'm not looking to be incendiary. I'm not looking to upset them. And I'm certainly not looking for a lecture from them about coming to Christ or being saved or turning away from the devil. I don't have time for that. Who the fuck does? So I definitely don't intentionally go towards those kinds of conversations. And if I was ever asked by somebody that I did know was like a massive Bible thumper about my beliefs, I probably would also just say that I was spiritual as well. Not because I'm ashamed, but because I can't be bothered. If I knew that I was going to get a fucking earful from someone, and it was just going to be unpleasant, and it might be unpleasant for other people around us or whatever, and it would just like basically put 50p in the Christian. I don't want to put 50p in a Bible bashing Christian. I know there's a lot of Christians out there that aren't like that, and that's awesome. But if I had a feeling that I was going to be putting 50p in the Christian machine, and the machine was just going to be going round and round and blaring the music out, and it would just be awful, I probably would refrain from saying I was a witch, frankly, because I just don't have time for that kind of thing, and I'm trying to avoid that kind of stuff really, because there's no way that person's going to convert me, and there's no way that I'm going to be able to fully respect that person after they've tried to aggressively convert me. So, you know, why get into the conversation with them in that way? When it comes to the broom closet, I really admire people wanting to be more out and proud about what they do and what their beliefs are and that kind of thing. I think that a lot of people do want to reduce the stigma around witchcraft. I think that's amazing. I think a lot of people want to be more open with their partners or their children about what they're doing and how it's positively affecting their lives, and I think that's amazing. I do, however, think that there are a lot of people who are needlessly worrying about coming out of the broom closet to people that simply do not need to know what your religious or spiritual affiliations are. It's not for them to know. So to me, my advice to anyone that's struggling with how open to be is ask yourself on a case-by-case basis, do you need to be open? Is it actually important that that person knows what you do? Obviously, is it safe for that person to know what you do? Are you going to experience a lot of nasty consequences and negative backlash as a result of telling this person what you do or what you believe? And if so, is it worth it? Is it really worth it? The way that I see it is, don't be a martyr for your beliefs. There are certain people in your life that you may feel do need to know, and there are certain conversations that you are going to want to have or that you're going to find that you have to have. But there are a lot of people that don't need to know, and there are a lot of conversations that I think witches are pushing themselves into having, or they're pushing themselves into answering very honestly when they really don't need to, and they really can just, you know, dilute it a fuck ton. You do not need to let everybody know your business, your spiritual business, and you know, please just be aware of that and keep that in mind, that it's not something that everybody everybody needs to know, and you have no obligation to let everyone know you're a witch and let everyone know what it's about. You get to be picky, and you get to select your response on a case-by-case basis, focusing on what is best for you, and also on how important it is to expend your energy in that way. It's not always important to expend your energy on, you know, helping people understand the finer points of your spiritual beliefs. Sometimes it's best to just leave it and give that diluted answer. How do you prepare for magic? What conditions do you need physically, emotionally, and spatially? The first thing I want to say is that I used to put off doing magic a lot because I convinced myself that I did need a very specific formula. I needed everything to be, the way that I describe it is just right. I needed everything to be just right in order to perform a magical working or do a ritual or whatever. And actually I missed out on a lot of opportunities in my 20s to perform really important ritual and cast really important spells because I just convinced myself that something wasn't right, something was off, you know. There was always something else that I could be doing instead, or I felt like I wasn't emotionally in the right headspace, or I wasn't feeling that overwhelming feeling that it was going to go right if I actually did it, and that kind of shit. So basically I was a perfectionist, and perfectionism and procrastination, you know, they're very much married. So I now try to convince myself much more that I do not need this really specific set of circumstances to do magic or ritual or spend time at the altar. And that's been working for me a lot. I have kind of taken myself away from the more perfectionistic tendencies that I had before. So if there's something going on with me emotionally in a specific area of my life and I've planned to do a spell to align with a certain part of the moon phase, and the moon phase is now upon me and it's time to do the spell, I'm not going to delay the spell because something else is going on in this area of my life that's making me feel like I'm not quite right. Life goes on, stuff happens. Sometimes you do have to do a spell without feeling that everything has been cleansed in readiness for you to do this thing, and you know that basically every other part of your life is perfect in order for you to begin. And I just feel like that was a problem that I had a lot when I was younger. So I do a lot more workings now, and I spend a lot more time now because I'm not looking for a specific emotional state of being in order to start the working, and I think that's been really important for me. I do need to have the space around my altar be clear. I do need to have like no clothes or books or any of that shit hanging around. So I do tidy my room where the altar is. I do tidy around the altar. I do hoover with my little, you know, I've got, how many witches have got a little altar hoover? You know, you've got your ordinary hoover for hoovering the floors, and then you've got your little like dustbuster kind of situation for your altar. I've got that so I can get into all the nooks and crannies without having to pull everything out. And I need that to be done, and you know, and that to be okay. Physically speaking, I do have a back injury, and I do actually sit down cross-legged at my altar space, which is where I do 99.999% of the magic that I perform. I do sometimes do magic out and about in circumstances where it's required, but I do not seek to venture outside to do magic or any of that. I don't like that because there's too many unseen variables, and I don't like the feeling of not being fully aware of what's going on in my space, where people are in relation to me and all that shizzle. I don't have a back garden at the moment. I live in a top floor apartment, so I do not do magic outside. So I do my magic at my altar. And in terms of physical strength, yes, I do need to make sure that I don't have any issues going on with my back. My back injury is a lot better now than it used to be, but I still do get those days where things have not gone right, where I've not slept right, and I have delayed a couple of workings on that basis. How do you stay present and positive in the face of people who are opposed to your spiritual style? I don't mean YouTube trolls, I mean family mostly. I mean, nobody else gets to co-sign on what you're doing spiritually, and it's really important that you remember that. You're doing what you're doing spiritually because you know that it has positive benefits. You know that it works for you and that it's advantageous for you. And if you have a feeling that your workings or your spiritual life is being encroached upon by other people's disapproval, then that's work that you can do on you. You can't change other people's opinions of what you're doing, but you can change the mindset that allows their opinions and their concerns to encroach upon you in your sacred time of doing spiritual workings and engaging in spiritual contemplation. And in fact, you really have to do that, because you cannot get a cosign from everyone in your life. There are going to be some people who do not understand, they do not want to, or they somehow cannot, and you still need to go ahead and live your spiritual life and do your thing. So it's really about working on you, working on setting up those mental boundaries and emotional boundaries so that you are not allowing other people's judgments to come into the sacred time that you are spending. They are not there. They are not there in that moment. They do not know what you are doing. They are not privy to what you are doing. It's between you and your deities or cosmos or however your framework is set up. You know, it's got nothing to do with them in that moment. If you find that people's negative judgments of what you are doing spiritually are really bothering you and making you feel like you can't stay positive about your path because people have been disparaging about it, then very often the best thing to do is to talk to other people that have a similar journey to you, to get involved in the YouTube community, to watch videos from fellow witches and spiritual people, to get involved in community in your environment if you can. You know, that kind of thing does really help, just connecting with other people who have similar belief systems to you or may have similar issues with family members who are disparaging or demeaning. Also, in certain cases, in more extreme cases, it is necessary to actually cut off from family members who will not just let you fucking live. And that might be something that in certain cases an individual does need to consider. It might not necessarily be the right thing in your case. You know, there are a lot of people who do rub along reasonably contentedly with family who have opposing spiritual beliefs, and there might be a little bit of back and forth that isn't necessarily pleasant, but people can actually remain in each other's lives, and I think that's wonderful. But let's face it, it's not always feasible, and sometimes we do need to move ourselves away from a consistently negative presence in our lives who is seeking to change us or is being really disparaging about something that is pretty central to our identity. You know, sometimes we do need to consider that that might be the way forward. Are there any makeup products that have stolen your heart lately? Yeah, I am really enjoying the translucent powder by ELF, or ELF as I keep referring to it, and they do have a really nice blusher compact as well. So this is the ELF blusher compact that I've been using, and I really love these three shades here particularly. And I'm also using yeah, the translucent powder, and that's really awesome for just getting a flawless finish as well. Two things that stole my heart a while ago that I do want to mention as well is the tattoo liner by Kat Von D, which I use all the time, and also the Locket foundation by Kat Von D. This one's really grubby and old. I've just actually had my new one delivered. I use the shade Light 45 Neutral, and I've got it on my face right now. So yeah, that's my little makeup update there. Never thought that would happen on my channel. Thank you so much for watching this Q&A. I really love doing these Pop-Tarts, and I will definitely be answering more questions in a Q&A in the next month or so. I hope these answers to your questions have been helpful. Much love and blessed be. Mwah.